today we are continuing with this humongous X-Men event that has taken the entire comic book world by storm. Pun intended. So this is the very first book out of this whole series, this whole event, that doesn't have Jonathan Hickman writing it. And so I feel like just from the very beginning, I want to tell you, I have a little bit of a bias, and it's a big shift coming from his writing style, which is very complex, to this kind of style, which honestly reminds me a little bit of Joss Whedon, to be honest with you. Only different. So, I don't want to give you a bunch of preconceived notions. I want you to kind of make up your mind for yourself, but I am going to tell you my opinions about this. So Jerry Duggan is writing this, Matteo Lolli is doing the art, and Federico Belli is doing the colors. And, just like that last week was X-Men #1 that launched. And, I feel like the art was a little bit of a step down from House of X and Powers of 10. This is kind of along the same lines. I don't feel like I connected with the art, to be honest. And it didn't really hit home for me. Again, every event has its own lulls and highs, and so for me, this book was kind of a lull, but I did get more information as to what's going on in the series. And the story structure, again, was good, In fact, in the very beginning, you get the very first plot point. It happens fast, And although, I will say this, I wasn't a big fan of the dialogue that occurred through here. Here's the thing. This might be a short review because I don't want to spend time beating this book over the head. Again, I'd love for people to actually make up their own minds and really, dive into the book anyway. Even though I feel like this wasn't for me. I have a kind of a serious quality about books that I generally prefer. Something has to be a specific kind of humor for me to really like it. I'm very picky about things that are supposed to be funny. I honestly, I love Chip Zdarsky. I think he's actually one of my very favorite writers in comic books today. But I don't like his comedy. When he tries to write funny, I just don't think it's funny. And I'd have to say that this is kind of the same quality that I get from this book, which of course that's fine. And hey, like I said, the structure is sound. At the very beginning, like I said, you get this first plot point, which is, they're all in Central Park. Give them some dialogue that I didn't prefer. And Kitty Pryde tries to walk through the gateway to Krakoa, and she breaks her nose, possibly. She's bleeding all over the place because she rams right into it, and the gateway won't let her through. And that's really where this book begins. It's on the very second page. You get this intro. It shows you the team, who all's going to be on the team. It looks like a good team, Kitty Pryde, Lockheed. I love Lockheed's character. Storm, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Wolverine, Emma Frost, Bishop, and Pyro. And, you don't really see Wolverine and Nightcrawler in this book, but apparently they're on the team. It may just say, who's in it. That's fine. But at the very beginning here, it says, "Ahoy, muties." You get it? It's pirates, right? So it kind of gives you a lowdown of what's going on. And apparently this whole entire book, the main purpose of the Marauders themselves, well, how's Kitty going to get back to Krakoa? So she steals a ship, a sailboat, and I guess she just becomes a pirate, and so she has to find some way to get back to Krakoa. And so she does get back there after it. You got this diary entry by her, and again, this diary entry here kind of feels a little bit of forced, a little bit of forced dialogue, but it's just not for me. I guess there's a lot of ways that I could probably explain this book, and I think that's probably the best way. Just that, I like a more serious tone if we're talking about the X-Men, and it is what it is. Again, this is a step up from what I believe was Tom Taylor's X-Men, in my opinion, So a little bit more about the story. They get to the island here, and Bobby Drake is the very first person that approaches her, and he says, "Kitty, welcome to Mutie Gras." You get it? Where the party never stops. Still can't use the gates, huh? She says, No, No, but I've been assured top men are on it. And then, I'd like to meet these top men, Bobby says. She says, me too, Bobby. And then you hear, did you get it? And I was like, well, did you get it? Yeah, well, Bobby Drake's saying he'd like to meet these top men. But did you get it? I got it. I got it. And then you find out that it's actually Wolverine, and he's saying that to Kitty Pryde. He's running in, and he's walking off with a bunch of whiskey. And he says, "You killed it, Kitty. Really pulled my ass out of the fire." So he's basically he's got beer, he's got coffee, he's got pomade. This is weird. Logan shopping list again. Perch made an interesting observation here, in his video, kind of reviewing this book, and he says, why wouldn't Wolverine just go get those? Because he can actually walk through the portals, but Kitty can't. But he made her go all the way around the world, a wine cellar in the village, Cubano sandwiches that's a long sail. Like, I don't know how long. I mean, Memphis ribs, that's a long way too. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on that, but it's just weird that I think it was for humor almost, but again, the humor for me kind of fell flat. I'd prefer for there not to be a bunch of humor in my X books. Like I said, I'm a little bit biased toward a serious nature for a lot of these, and you do get some reoccurring jokes throughout. So I'll tell you what this kind of reminded me of, because I have this other book right in front of me, just like the Marauders that I've been looking at. So this is X Factor 71, okay? And, there's these reoccurring jokes throughout. They start out, and it's, Guido and Polaris, and they're eating, Strong Guy and Polaris, before he's even called Strong Guy, And this is the first time they meet, and this whole entire first intro is about opening a mayonnaise jar and food and mustard. And so we were joking with some guys in a group that I'm in, and we're saying, if this was put out in modern day, people would have a fit. They would absolutely lose their mind, because they'd be like, all this is talking about food and people eating. And yeah, I can see that too. And I thought it was really a funny thing that these guys pointed out, and I get it, but it was funny and I enjoyed it, and I think the difference was, for me, is maybe the way that the dialogue was presented. And look, as a writer, I'm not great at dialogue. And so I think that is probably my disconnect here, is that I'm not seeing what it is about the dialogue in Marauders that I don't really prefer about it, but there's a lot of things, I could read all of this dialogue in voices and be entertaining and make it seem more absurd than it actually is. I'm not going to do that, I don't want to put a bunch of outrage on this book. I think that if people like humor and like the X-Men, then they can pick this up and kind of figure it for themselves. But I've always liked Peter David's writing, Strawman's a great artist as well. So, of course, I love the classic X Factor. I'm going through as many of these as I can find, and I don't know. It's kind of like I said, a lot of this humor didn't really hit home for me. It continues this whole plot, and you find out that, Emma, she goes through this big, long, and I'll show this page right here. She goes through this big, long diatribe when she's, telepathically connecting to Kitty Pryde, telling her kind of what she wants her to do. They establish the Hellfire Trading Company. I think that this, if it was kind of written as a more serious book, would actually appeal to me a lot more, because this is kind of the foreign relations kind of book, operating with the island of Krakoa. This is the book that kind of establishes how they're going to represent themselves to these countries that won't recognize their own nation's sovereignty. So the Marauders, it turns out, toward the end, of course, I'm not going to spoil any of this, but, the Marauders are going to be sent to, pull people and extract them, because we've already talked about this in the previous books. Jonathan Hickman says that they're going to rescue people from these countries that refuse to recognize them. And so it looks like the Marauders are going to be going to each country individually and pulling these mutants out and trying to rescue them from these nations, which is a really cool concept. I hope that this continues on a more serious note, though. I will likely pick up issue number 2, because again, I want to see where this story goes, and I'd prefer to actually get the whole taste of this instead of just bits and pieces. You find out that, again, more kind of cutesy humor that I wasn't fond of. But you find out that they have a suit. The Russians have built this suit that is kind of like Iron Man armor, but it negates mutant abilities. So that's a thorn in their side. They have to confront that. And there's some great action in the end, Hey, I will say this. As much as this book really didn't do it for me, didn't appeal to me, there were some serious moments in it, specifically with Bishop. He's one of my very favorite characters in all of the X-Men. He's a very serious character, so I was very glad that he was depicted in such a way, and that the whole scene with him was handled with seriousness. That was a high point in the book for me, for sure. And I'll tell you, hey, pick it up. And unless you already know by the description I've given, then it's not for you. If you like humor, if you like the X-Men, then this book might be for you. It's just that, again, I did like some of Joss Whedon's X-Men. I didn't feel like it was really planned out carefully, and some of the humor didn't do it for me. But I still did enjoy it more than anything else passed from after Morrison, I'll say. So, hey, this is Marauders number 1. It's basically X-Men pirates. Kitty's the team leader, and there's a lot of humor in it. So if you're into that kind of thing, why not? Hey, pick it up if you like that kind of stuff. Again, I can't rate this high for myself, so it's not really a recommend. But it might be for you, honestly. Comics can really be for absolutely anybody, and I just feel like this maybe wasn't written for me. And that's the way I'm going to handle these from now on. Just give my honest critique, and just tell you how I feel about them, because I got opinions just like everyone else. So hey, look, I'm going to be covering as many of these X-Men books as possible, and I'm going to have more videos that I'm going to be releasing over the next week or so, of course. I hope you will subscribe, even if you don't like my opinions, but I want to hear what you have to say about it. Am I a complete asshole for just not liking this book? What do you think? Do you think this would appeal to you? I can only imagine that a lot of my subscribers already probably aren't really fond of this style of writing. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your perspective. Did you read this book? Are you going to? And which X-Men books are you going to pick up? And even if you're not reading this, and you're not going to, tell me what you are reading, what you love about comics. What have you read recently that you didn't like? Leave a comment below, and I hope to see you on the next video. You are the gateway into comics.